Hey class, I wanted to get down to business on the second homework assignment. So this is the sheet you guys have that's labeled pages 3 and 4. So we'll run through that. Why don't we see it? Okay, you see it. Alright. Yeah, so we're doing page 3 and 4. Let's hop to it. These first 3 questions are just labeling the sides again. So I'm just going to do that really fast. Assignment number 1 was filled with problems like this, so you guys should be good at this by now. Again, we're looking opposite would be over here. This, of course, would be the hypotenuse. Adjacent's going to be down here. Big whoop. If we're looking at this angle, then we go across. That's opposite. Across from 90 is hypotenuse, and up here is adjacent. And then here, across from 90, that's my hypotenuse. Across from the angle is opposite, of course, and this is adjacent. So those 3 questions are easy. You're just labeling sides. Now we get to the real deal. We have to actually solve for x. So for this, you've got to label your sides like we just did. The x is opposite, and the 12 is hypotenuse. So now, since you are working with opposite and hypotenuse, you got to figure out if that's sine, cosine, or tangent. And to do that, just use SOHCAHTOA, like we always do. And we can see that of sine and cosine and tangent, the one that uses O and H is sine. So forget about cosine, forget about tangent. We need to write a sine equation. And every sine equation is going to be the sine of an angle. So the 32 is what goes inside of the sine function. Then the fraction is going to be opposite over hypotenuse in that order, opposite on top, so x on top. Hypotenuse is on the bottom, so 12. Now we said just cross multiply. So I'm getting x times 1 is x. That'll be 12 times sine 32. Alright, so again, depending on what kind of calculator you've got, how do I bring that up for me? There it is. Clear. So you might want to just, again, it depends what kind of calculator you got. If you've got a TI, I'll do that first. There's the TI. If you got a TI, then it's easy. You're just literally going to type, can't see what I'm doing, 12 sine 32, you just type that in, 12 sine 32 equals, it does it, you get 6.359, which is 6.36. So that's it. So I'm going to get rid of that. That's easy. Everyone that's got that, you're lucky, you're blessed. The rest of us have different calculators. So again, if you've got a calculator that can do trig at all, at least that's pretty good, right? So y'all could do this. So you're gonna at least figure out what the sine of 32 is. I think you'll do that first. If you've got one of these calculators where if you hit sine you don't get anything, that's because it's taking the sine of whatever's on the screen. So you have to type the 32 first, then press sine. Boop. This is the sine. So now you could multiply that by 12. So say times 12. Hit enter, and there's your 6.36. So that's, this is a little bit harder to do. But whatever, we get our answer of 6.36 just as well. But there is one last option, of course. And that last option is those people that don't even have a scientific calculator at all. They just have a basic 4-function calculator. Well, those people, they are going to have to use their trig table. So where's my trig table? Oops. File, open. So I've got one in here. We'll use this one. So here it is. This is no fun to look at. Let's throw that in the bin. What the? How many pieces is that? Okay, hold on. Bear with me. Should have prepared it ahead of time. I didn't. Too bad. All right, pull that up. Fit to like, that seems too big. All right, that looks great. Love it. All right, so what did I just say? We wanted the sine of 32 or something? Yeah. Now again, you guys should know this by now. I mean, hopefully this is a waste of time for pretty much everybody. But if anyone hasn't seen this yet, if you want to find the sine of 32, then you are looking for 32 degrees. Let me just put a big dot on this, so I got something to grab onto. Okay, so look, we're looking. Where's 32? There it is. You look in the sine column, there it is. You can see the 0.5299, right? Ooh, just barely. I forget you guys are seeing less than I'm seeing. Okay, my bad, my apologies. So anyway, 5299. So you pick that number up and you bring it back to your work, and just record it. So now if that's worst case scenario, then you should be fine. You can find the sine of 32 in your calculator, no matter what kind of calculator you got. And then you can type it in. Clear everything. You can do 12 times 0.5299, and you still get 6.36, just like the rest of us got. Okay, but that's 3 levels of how you have to do these problems. So if you've got a TI calculator, great, you guys are getting off easiest. If you've got a scientific calculator at all, then you still at least can find your sine, cosine, tangent values pretty easily and do the problems pretty easily. But even if you have to use a table, I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's bad. You just look for the angle. If you wanted the tangent of 20, you find 20. There it is. Tangent's this third column, so make sure you go to the third column. You can see it's 0.3640, and then you do the math like anything else. Okay, even with a 4-function calculator, you ought to be okay. All right, so let's do the rest of these and make sure we're okay. Again, if you haven't done this homework and you're watching this video, please click pause right now. Do at least a few of these yourself, because you're going to really be kicking yourself if you think you know what you're doing and then it turns out you don't because you didn't actually practice. So get the practice in. Okay. So for number 5, how do we do it? Well, here's my angle. Across from that is opposite. This is hypotenuse. So this is adjacent. So this problem, which involves adjacent and hypotenuse, we got to use cosine for. So it'll be the cosine of 50. It'll equal the 8 in the numerator, the x in the denominator. And again, we talked before about how this makes this a little more challenging, because this time when you cross multiply, you get 8 equals x times the cosine of 50. So you're not actually done yet. You have to now divide by the cosine expression. And then those will cancel. But you got to divide by it over here too. So this is slightly different because instead of finding that x is equal to, your side length multiplied by the sine of the angle, we're getting that x equals the side length divided by the cosine of the angle. And that's fine. We should be able to plug everything in and get our answer, but it is going to be a little bit different. Again, I'll do it on the little calculator, I guess. See how that goes. So what are we doing? 8 divided by cosine 50? Okay. So how do we do that? Well, actually, we said on this kind of calculator, it's really hard because you have to do the cosine of 50 first. Is that true? I don't think it is. Let me try this. Let's go 8 divided by, and then what you have to do is say 50, but then don't hit enter yet, of course. You have to hit cosine. Get that cosine of 50. Now hit equals, and we're going to get the right answer. But so the keystrokes there are a little weird, right? Okay, you enter the 8 first. You say, I'd like to do 8 divided by, and then the way you get cosine of 50 is you do 50, and then you hit cosine to get to that decimal. Then you have to remember to hit equals, and there's your answer, 12.45. Okay, so 12.45 is our answer. And we usually want to say x is approximately 12.45. All right, on to the next one. So for this one, we've got this 25, x is opposite from it, and 17 is adjacent to it. So we see we're not using the hypotenuse. So again, if you're thinking about SOHCAHTOA, you know that sine is out because it wants the hypotenuse. Cosine's out too. It's got to be tangent because we're working with O and A. So you write the equation. Tangent 25 equals x over 17. Cross multiply. Throw this over 1 if you need to. But we can see that we're going to get x equals 17 times tan 25. And that should do it. Got a fan going in my room. It's blowing on my eyes. I'm going to turn that off. Let's do 17 times tangent 25. So we clear everything. 17 times 25 tan equals, there you go, 7.93. All right, that's 3 down, a few more to go. Let's keep going. All right, same old, same old. Looking at this next triangle, number 7, opposite from the 24, I see a 42. And adjacent, I see an x. Again, if we're talking about SOHCAHTOA, OA, that's TOA, that's going to be tan. So we're doing tangent of 24. Yeah, equals opposite, which is 42, divided by x. So you cross multiply. 42 times 1 is 42. And it equals x times the tangent of 24. That tells me I should be dividing by 24. So we'll get x equals 42 in the numerator, tangent of 24 in the denominator. And our calculator will give us the answer. So let's type it in. So 42. Oops, that's times. I guess you can just switch it. So 42 divided by 24 tan equals 94.33. Yeah, I guess I trust that. 94.33. And the next one. So what's happening here? We're using this as our angle. So opposites over here, that's unlabeled. So this must be adjacent. And I must be solving for the hypotenuse. So again, SOHCAHTOA, AH is ka, that must mean we're using cosine of our 55-degree angle, and it equals 85 over x. So you cross multiply, and you get 85 equals x times cosine 55. So divide by cosine 55. And x is going to equal the 85 in the numerator, and the cosine 55 in the denominator. And we just use our calculator to figure this out. Let's do this one with our table, just for the sake of argument. So it'll be 85 divided by whatever our table says the cosine of 55 is. So go to your table. Look for 55. There's 45. Back to the top. There's 55. And cosine's the middle column. So you want the 5736. So now to get your final answer in degrees or in decimals, we're going to type 85 divided by 0.5736. And I'm getting 148.19. And now that I'm seeing these numbers again, I'm starting to think that I reviewed all these questions in class for all the classes. Maybe nobody needs this. Maybe a couple people that missed class because they were sick. But, oh well, I don't know if anybody needs this, which is fine. I don't mind doing it. Let's solve for x one more time. Given that we're using this 74-degree angle, we're going to call 32 the opposite side. X is the hypotenuse. That means in SOHCAHTOA, we're talking about sine, because it's O and H, SOHCAHTOA. So we'll say that the sine of 74 equals opposite over hypotenuse, so 32 over x. Throw that over 1. When we cross multiply, we'll get the 32, and it'll equal x times sine 74, which means to solve, you got to divide by sine 74. So if you've got a little scientific calculator, then you can type in, how do we type this again? We go 32 divided by, then you have to type the angle, 74, then you say I want the sine of that angle, then you got to hit equals, and you get 33.29. And that's it. All right, cool. Yeah, sure. So that's 9 problems down. Oh yeah, so then we get to these problems that are kind of like word problems, but not really. Again, all the information you need is given. So you just have to attack these the same way we did the last ones, but you can see how these feel kind of like word problems. You know, you'll see a word problem soon where it says, you know, the angle of elevation from a point that's 250 feet away from the base of a building is 25 degrees. How tall is the building? And you might have to read that and then draw your own drawing. Here I'm giving you the drawing and I'm not giving you the words, but it kind of helps you to start to see a connection. Anyway, for this problem, I hope you can tell that x is opposite from the 25 and the 250 is adjacent. That means we're writing a tangent equation. So the tangent of 25 equals opposite over adjacent 250. So x is going to be the 250 times the tangent of 25. And at this point, we're just hitting buttons to get to our decimal. So here goes. 250 times 25 tangent of, don't forget to hit equals, and you get 116.58. All right, now since this is kind of like a word problem, since we have units, I want you to remember to give units. So make sure you say feet. If you don't say feet, you're going to lose half a point. The good news is, if you forget to say feet again in number 4, you wouldn't lose that half a point again. I'll knock you down once for forgetting units, but I won't knock you down ever again. Just once per paper. Seems fair enough. And that should be good enough reason to remember to do it anyway. Let's do 4. Again, here's my angle. So this is adjacent, and this is hypotenuse. So this will be a cosine problem. And we'll say the cosine of 32 equals x over 100. So cross multiply, you get x equals 100 times the cosine of 32, which we can put into our calculator to get an answer. So 32 cosine, there it is. Now multiply that by 100 and you're done. So 84.80. So don't round up because 4 is too small. So 84.80 is the answer. By the way, when you're rounding, I do want you to leave that 0 on the end. That 0 is significant. It tells you, if it's there, it tells you that the value of that place really is 0. If it wasn't there, you would kind of wonder whether it was 0, 1, or 2, or 3, or 4, right? And 84.84 is pretty different from 84.80. So when you're rounding numbers off, you do want to leave zeros on the end. Don't just ignore them. And those are feet. So let's do 5 and 6. All right, so we got this crane. I guess this is a crane. We've got this 40-degree angle of elevation. And they want us to solve for, I guess, the length of this arm on the crane. So fine, we can do that. Same old thing. You're still going to just say this is opposite. This is hypotenuse. So the equation I'm going to write is a sine equation. And it'll be the sine of 40. It'll equal 30 over x. So now we have that slightly different kind of question where with x in the denominator, when we multiply, we don't get the final answer. We get x times the sine 40. And we still have to do one more step. We have to divide both sides by sine 40. So we land on x being equal to 30 divided by sine 40. Which means that x is approximately, what are we doing? 30 divided by 40 sine. So we take the sine of 40, 30 is already in there, do the division, 46.67. And those are feet, just like everything else so far. Okay, so for number 6, we're using the 58-degree angle. So 50 is opposite and x is adjacent. If we're using opposite and adjacent, then SOHCAHTOA, OA, OA, that's tangent. Again, that's how we make our choices here. We just think about SOHCAHTOA. You're looking for O and A. It's right here. So you better write a tangent equation. And we're going to say the tangent of 58 equals 50 over x. Okay, so we cross multiply, we get our answer. Some of you guys might have picked up on a trick by now. We can just kind of flip-flop these. If that's how some of y'all think of this, then be my guest. The x kind of goes over there. And then we end up with a fraction where 50 is in the numerator. And the denominator is tangent of 58. That really won't ever lead you wrong. So if you want to be doing that, you can. It's okay. It's not great. I prefer you guys think of it as cross multiplication. I think that's a little bit safer. But this works. We could see it would have worked over here too. If we just switch the x and the sine 40, then we land on x equals 30 divided by sine 40, don't we? So it's a little more efficient. Anyway, let's figure out this final value. It's going to be 50 divided by 58 tangent of it equals, so 31.24, that's what I'm getting. And it's yards this time. Yeah, that feels fine to me. 31.24. All right. 2 more. And then that's another homework done. After this, we'll obviously move on to the worksheet on word problems. And you can watch that video too if you want to. Anyway, let's nail these. I don't know, in red. Seems like the right call given that it's about fire. So here's your 28. This is opposite. This is hypotenuse. So write me a sine equation. Again, x is in our denominator, so we could just do that trick I just taught you where we just imagine sort of switching the positions of those things. So 60 stays up here, but x switches with the sine of 28. You'll land on this, which you can just do in your calculator. So we're going to go 60 divided by 28 sine equals 127.80 meters. All right, and then the last one, you've got this 22-degree angle, and opposite isn't given, but x, the hypotenuse, is what we're searching for, and this adjacent side, 300 meters, we've given that too. So this is a cosine equation. Cosine of 22 equals 300 over x. This is another one with x in the denominator. So we have to go back to the first couple to get to one where x wasn't in the numerator. And that's fine. Remember these, you're just cross multiplying. So x equals 250 times tan 25. The ones we're doing now, we said if you cross multiply, you might end up having to divide. But we said there's kind of an easier way to think about it. Just switch these. Just say x equals 300 over cosine 22. And let's figure out what that's worth. So 300 divided by 22 cosine equals 323.56. And those are meters. And that's a wrap, I think, on homework number 2. So pages 3 and 4, that's it. It's all basic trig. The one thing you might notice was not on this assignment at all, but that you definitely need to know for the quiz, is if I had given you a triangle. And what if I told you this side down here was 300? And then I told you this side up here was 460. I might ask you to solve for this angle, right? And hopefully you remember that if the cosine of theta, am I behind my little calculator? I am. So I'll move my little calculator. Okay. Anyway, for a problem like this, remember, which we'll get to this in the next video, but if you know that the cosine of theta is equal to 300 over 460, then remember to solve for theta, you got to take the inverse cosine. So there weren't any inverse cosine problems on this whole sheet, but there will be some in the word problem section, so I don't feel too bad about it. But here, inverse cosine and cosine cancel out. You get theta. And theta will be whatever the inverse cosine of 300 over 460 is. So I guess, just to show this again a bunch of times, on the TI calculator, how do you do this? Pretty easy. You just type it in. So how do you get to the inverse cosine? Just make sure you notice that right above the cosine button it says inverse cosine. You hit second, then you hit the cosine button, you get inverse cosine. Then you just type in the side lengths, 300 divided by 460. This is all stuff I made up, remember, this isn't anywhere. But if you divide, then the answer you get back is an angle. So they're telling me that angle is 49.29 degrees. Okay, you do have to know this. That's it. And again, we'll talk about some more inverse cosine problems as we do the word problems, which we'll do in the next video. So I'll see you there. Bye.